Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're working again today on a reel in a bag, or in this case, a reel in a box. This one was sent in to me. It's in pieces and parts. Those of you that watched my preview know that this was one of the ones I was planning to work on. And it's a Penn reel. It's a Penn number 9, and it came to me, and the proud owner of this reel said I did a lot. I took it apart, I cleaned it all up, I greased it, and I just can't get the reel back together, particularly with the dog. So we're going to show you how to put it back together. Next time he'll have a reference in his library of how to do that. I admire him for trying to put this together, and sometimes, you know, you just need a little assist to know how to do it for the rest of your life. So we're going to start by making sure that all the pieces and parts are here. Now, how do you do that? Well, if you have a reel schematic, that would help, and you can get the reel schematics for this. They're available at mysticparts.com. And if you don't have a reel schematic, then hopefully you have a donor reel to kind of go by. In this case, I kind of know this reel, and I'm interested to see if we really do have all the pieces and parts here. I'm just kind of doing a mental inventory of this. But while I'm doing that, I think we can probably go ahead and start reassembling, getting some of these pieces out of the way so that we know how to, what if anything is missing. I do notice I have a couple extra washers in that. I'm thinking that maybe there was a drag washer conversion or something down here, but I'm going to put that bridge right back in for now. And we'll start by putting these side pieces on. Now, if you're doing a level wind reel like this, you need to put the non-gear side on. Don't put the gear side piece on, because you won't be able to install the bridge and the like. But you can do that by doing this on the non-gear side. And we need the cross posts, and we need the bridge. We need the reel set and the like. All right, so let's go ahead. Now, in your inventory of pieces and parts, one of the things to note is that the screws for the bridge, or I'm sorry, the reel seat, are smaller than the screws are for the cross posts. They're shorter. So when you go to do your reassembly, make sure that the short ones are the ones that you use for this piece. This is always a balancing act. That first one in is tough. After you do that, it's kind of easy. Some people prefer to put the cross posts on first. Whichever you choose is fine. I just grabbed this because this was the first piece I saw. I may have to back this off a little bit. These tolerances are pretty tight in these cases. It's kind of interesting. There we go. All right. Grab that crossbar. So this one has beautiful side plates. The crossbars and the reel seats show a lot of use, but that's okay. It's just that the chrome is melted away from these. It's not particularly a problem. It's a problem if you want to collect the reel, because condition means a lot in that regard. But if you're just if you're fishing them, you don't need to worry about it. There are folks out there that will go and have these re-chromed. That can be done at machine shops, or actually motorcycle shops know how to do that, or at least know who does that in the area if you want to go get something re-chromed. And generally it's not worth the price to do it. However, if you have a reel that just happens to be a favorite reel of yours, or maybe it was handed down in your family or something, and you just want to preserve that, and you'd like to have the best chrome, yeah, go ahead and do that. All right, this one, it belongs right above where the level wind is going to be, and that groove faces forward. I always let this one float. And the one below here, sometimes you get lucky and you can put it in, and sometimes you can't, in terms of installing the level wind worm gear. I'll take a chance, but we may have to come back later and pull that and do it again. That started. That little one rolled off. We got it back. Always a renegade in the crowd. Alright, so tighten that one up. So we've got our crossbars and we've got our reel seat. We have our shield. We have our line guide. Now I know Ralph said that he's lubed everything, but I'm going to take this off and I'm going to make sure we get a drop of oil into the pawl assembly. You also want to check the teeth on the pawl, make sure that they're okay. They are. You just get a little bit onto the shaft, a little bit onto the pawl assembly, and we'll just go ahead and put that back in. And then we can move on to the gear side, making sure that we got all of that done as well. Now, okay, so just again, just make sure that you do a series of untightening and tightening and rolling the worm gear, and eventually you will get it to seat properly. All right, we can put that on. Okay, so it's time to turn our attention to the bridge and rebuilding the gear side plate. And I noticed this when I took this off earlier. We have the wrong spring in here. I'm not sure what that spring is to, but I know it's not to this. The spring should be mounted from underneath, and this one just looks kind of bent up or whatever, but that'll never work. So we'll show you what the good spring is. I was able to get one. This is the way the spring should be, and we'll go ahead and show you how to replace that spring in eccentric if you happen to have this reel apart. So you want to start by removing the screw and the arm. Once you have that lever arm off, you can push the eccentric through and out with the bad. I don't know what this came from, but you can go back. Then you want to insert the spring from underneath. That one was inserted from on top. Sits in the hole that way. Rests in the back of the cavity there. And then rests like that. Now, this, in order for this to work, then it has to be rotated in a counterclockwise fashion. You can usually do that by your hand. Once you find that balance point, you should be able to come around on the other side then, holding that eccentric pretty tight, get the lever arm on it, and then get the screw back in it. And that's how you take care of that. So that one had a spring that was loaded from the top. There's no way that the free spool would work properly because that spring coming in from the top would bump against the free spool release jack, and that would probably interfere with the performance. All right, now you have a properly set spring for this reel. Speaking of springs, we want to find the two yoke springs. Those would be next. Then we need the yoke. We want to get grease on that yoke. And I'm going to use Penn Precision reel grease for this. Not because it's a Penn reel, but because it's a fishing reel grease. Then we want the yoke. Then we need the grease onto the gears of the yoke. And then those sit on top of the springs, like this. You can compress down on the assembly now. Take the jack. The points on the jack go inside or underneath. They form a ramp to push down that yoke. So that's your assembly now on the jack and the yoke. Let's go over to the bridge. I'm noticing that there's quite a few washers in here, so I want to make sure we have the right amount. I don't know if this was kind of done afterwards. This is the wrong washer for the bottom. This is an HT100 washer. It requires a hard washer, so let me go get one of those. Okay, I've returned with that hard washer. You don't want to use the HT100s or anything else for that matter. If you can get the hard washer, you should be able to get that. And while I'm turning this, even though it said it was all cleaned and lubed, I'm not sure that the underside of the gear sleeve was done, so I just want to check that. It does feel a little tight. I'm going to use my pick. There's a pin that holds that in. This may be off camera. If it is, I apologize, but just simply poke through. Sometimes you may need an assist. Sometimes you can just push it out with the pin. And if you need a little assist, grab it with the pliers to pull the rest of the way. Then you should be able to slip it off once you clear that channel. Like that. And yeah, this seems pretty clean. It may have been done, but no sense not doing it, taking the risk that there's dirt and everything lodged in there. And also run a cotton swab through the channel here just to make sure that it's clean. All right, we can reinstall. We'll put a little bit of grease back on there. Put the sleeve back on. It's running freer now, so maybe, I don't know. Doesn't matter. We've done it properly. Then you can press the pin back in. Make sure that the pin clears this ridge here, otherwise it won't work. We're going to put our hard washer on. Let's go ahead and get the main gear. It did grease this. We'll just put a little bit more on there, just make sure it's well done. Press the main gear on. This has got one carbon text washer in there. Looks like there was an upgrade on that. Well, these are, I'm guessing that's what it is. Yep. One goes in there. Next up would be the keyed washer. Second washer. Carbon texts don't get the grease. Here's your third one. The eared washer always goes in the middle. Third of the carbon text. Cap washer. Or the last of the keyed washers, then the cap washer. I got two extra washers in here. And I guess that's one because I replaced the one below with the hard washer, and I'm not sure why I have a model washer here. That looks like for a 60. Not sure why that is. Okay, so then this is where Ralph got a little sidetracked. How do I get the anti-reverse dog in? Here's my dog. You want to find the bridge screw that has the full threads on it. Hopefully we've got the, yep, we do. Find the little flat spring which controls the dog. Seems to be just a little bit of junk on the side of the case here. Might as well get that out. Alright, so the threaded washer comes in, or threaded screw rather. Our bridge assembly gets mounted and turned halfway to like a perpendicular with its finish point. The anti-reverse dog goes on to the threaded screw, and then our little flat spring sits on top of the dog. It's going to kind of ride like this. I'll leave it out for a moment just so you see. Rides on top of the dog, wraps around that metal post. Easier said than done. And then compresses into this to rest on the side plate. So that's how this comes together. It is now resting on top of the dog, wraps around the metal stud, resting on the side plate here. Once you do that, then turn your bridge the rest of the way until you line up that bottom hole with the screw that's holding the dog, and then give that screw a turn or two just to start it getting seated there. Don't tighten it all the way down because you want to put the other screws in next. The partially threaded screws, well, that's where the springs ride, so they go up top. As I said that, I put that in the bottom slot. Same thing, just get it caught. Just one or two turns. Do the same thing, get the partially threaded screw for the other side. Make sure that gets seated. And take the fully threaded screw for the bottom of the corner. And then once you get all four, and you can just visually see all four are in there, then you can come back, kind of do a north, south, east, west, kind of a turning, alternate the sides, make sure that they're snug. And once you do that, then give it a turn, make sure that you hear that anti-reverse dog working. Make sure that your jack slides up and down nicely. It will with the new spring. And grab a little bit of grease with the jack up, because you couldn't get the grease on that when you were putting that in, and that'll help slide on the back side of that bridge there. Okay, that's this piece. We've got a bearing that was taken out here. You can either oil or you can grease this. I generally put a little bit of grease in there. The spool, the end of the spool is going to ride in that channel there. Let's go ahead and put that back in at this point. And I believe for this reel, I think that's a 10mm. If you have that Penn wrench actually fits this. If you don't have the Penn wrench, I do believe it's a 10mm. Nope, it's probably the 8. Take the 8mm then and tighten it up again, snug. With that done, then we can put the gear sleeve on, or the ferrule. We can put the adjuster on. Okay, and now it's time to reinstall. So take your spool, make sure you get grease on both sides. Sit that in through here. Now this is a Teflon gear over here. It does not require any grease. If you can get grease into that back bearing, go ahead and do that. It's one of the reasons why these brushes work well. You can also use oil rather than grease there if you like. Go ahead and put the spool in. Remember, the spool with the shoulder is the one that's going to work in the shoulder of this here, so that's the facing outside. All right, now you want to take your side plate and put that over the spool. Set the free spool to the off position and grab one of the long screws to anchor this. Oh, I'm missing the trim ring. While we're at it, we can put a piece of grease or a little bit of grease into the hole here, but I'm going to just... Okay. All right, get the trim ring on. Okay, once that side plate is installed on there, go ahead and take the assembly, put it over this shaft of the spool. In free spool mode now, just kind of set the first screw into that cross post. It's a long one. Remember, the short ones go below. And just give it a turn or two. That's just going to help anchor it before you go ahead and put the line guide on. Now, the line guide is the short side and the long side. The short side faces out. You're going to want to set the one side and then come over and get it into the other side. And both points have to fit in order for this to work properly. Once you do that, then get a secondary screw, maybe the top one here. That's a long one. And once you seat this one, you'll be able to tighten down. Now you'll notice I did not install the line guide at this point. Some folks tried to do that, and all that does is complicate life and make it quite a juggling match to get everything working properly. So I've learned that if you just take the side plates first and go ahead and install those, that you can come back and do that line guide afterwards. So that's what we're finishing up on now. And hopefully I have enough room. I don't remember if it's the 109. One of these just gives me a headache when I go to install that line guide because the crossbar doesn't have enough swing in it. Alright, there's one more here that belongs to this crossbar as we speak. So let's go ahead and tighten that down. This one's just not lining up properly. Be patient. There we go. All right, and now what we're going to do is we're going to remove this cap on this side. And then we'll work to reseat this. So we've already oiled this. We're going to slide the arm to the right-hand side of the assembly. We're going to come in from underneath and bring the assembly through that cavity there. We're going to back it up. We're going to make sure that it sits in the slot on this. Push it all the way over. Turn your reel in gear. We don't have the drag set. Let's go ahead. Okay, you'll notice that the reel is apart again. When I did the test, the main drive wasn't driving. And a quick look said that, well, when we had this apart, before it was apart, this was installed backwards. So there's two sides on the worm gear. There's a side that's rectangular, slot that's going to fit into the drive side and drive the reel, and there's a slot that's round. Well, this one was put in with the round side facing the drive, which is incorrect. So a simple reversal, putting the pole back in, and reinstalling should fix that. So I guess there's a moral to be learned here. Don't assume anything when you go to put a reel that's in pieces and parts back together. We saw a couple of things there. We had the wrong side screw. I'm sorry, the side spring for the eccentric was installed improperly. We didn't have the correct washer under the main gear, and we had a couple extra washers there that if we tried to install would be a problem. And now we have a drive side that was put on reverse. So let's do this again for those that weren't paying attention the first time. Spool goes back in, side plate goes in with the free spool in the off position. We anchor that with a long screw to one of the cross posts. I like the one in the back, kind of keeps you out of harm's way. Just enough that it's going to hold it there. Short side of the gears, the line guide sleeve faces out. Get that anchored in both sets of holes. And come on back and you can tighten this down a little bit as a holding point. Take another one and try and go for the one in the middle. Tighten that down. And again, we haven't reinstalled the line guide yet. I leave that for last. I just don't want to wrestle anything more than what we already have here. Then we'll put the two reel seat pieces in. This is the one. This one's having a little bit of an offset issue, so I'm going to use the pick on the one side to get the other side set and lined up properly. There we go. One more screw here. And this time around, I'm confident that the line guide will work. Alright, so we're going to remove the side plate screw. We're going to come in from underneath again. You want to swing that arm over to the right hand side. Bring that up and in and over and seat it into the ridge. And let's, clicker's on. Bring the cap back on for the line guide, the screw cap. we can start installing that, and it may or may not be seated at this point. So that's what you're going to work on now. You're going to just back it off, push it over to the right until it starts to spin. There you go, it's spinning now. And then it has to be centered for that cap. So just kind of play around with it until you get it centered. Now we have a line guide. There you go. All right. Handle and handle nut, or handle screw is all that's left. And Ralph will be able to take this one fishing again. Now if we didn't take that sleeve off and grease it, this would be where you would put oil in that cap. You want to work that by hand to get it started. There we go. And you can finish it with your wrench. Now you want to line up the slot on that handle screw with the slot for the hold down screw. Grab the retainer screw. Be patient. Alright, tighten it down. Give it a turn. Make sure you're working in free spool. Make sure your line guide is tight in here. Make sure that you've tightened down that bar. Sometimes I leave them open a little bit for the adjustment purposes, so make sure that's tight before you go too far. Flip it. There you go. All right, Ralph, you're ready to go fishing again. So thanks for the project, and thanks for watching. If you have comments or questions, please leave them in the comments section. If you liked the video, please indicate that. If you don't want to miss any of these, please subscribe and hit the notifications button. That'll ensure that every time that I post one of these videos, which is trying to be daily lately, you won't miss any of them. So I hope you've enjoyed that. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thanks for watching.